Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We're learning Mishnah Yevamos, Parak Test, Chapter 9, Mishnah Aleph, Mishnah 1. So the Mishnah starts with some call it rules or general categories. Yesh mutaris laba'aleyan v'asiris liyivmeyan. There are women who are permissible to their husbands, but forbidden to their Yevama, to their husband's brother. Meaning, you could have a situation where a man is married to a woman. There was nothing wrong with the marriage. And if he dies without children, and now she falls to Yibam to his brother, they cannot marry. You could have a situation where the original marriage was okay, but the Yibam cannot take place because the brother is forbidden to her. She's forbidden to the brother. You could have a situation where the woman was permissible to her husband, but is forbidden to his brother, even though there's Yibam. But it could be a situation where it's particular to the brother who will be doing Yibam. This woman is forbidden. We'll see what the case is, but let's just go. Now we're just going through the categories. You have women that are permissible to their husbands, but forbidden to we'll call them their Yavam, their brother-in-law. Mutaris livid meyen. You could have situations where it's the opposite. The women are actually permitted to their brother-in-law, the Yavim, Vasiris Labaleyan, but they were forbidden to their husbands. That means they had a forbidden marriage to their husband. Nonetheless, if the husband dies without children, she falls to Yibam to her brother-in-law, and theoretically, she's permissible to him, because whatever made her forbidden to his brother isn't a reason for him. Next, Mutaris la'elu v'la'elu. You could have situations where the men are permitted to both. They're permitted to the husband, permitted to the brother. Va'asiris elu. And you can even have cases where they're forbidden to both. Forbidden to the husband and forbidden to the brother. These are the categories, and the Mishnayos now will go through them specifically. Now, one thing that's important to bear in mind in all these cases is that if you remember back to the beginning of our Masechta here in Yevamos, if it comes out that the woman who is falling to Yibam, to her husband's brother, is an erva to that brother, she's a forbidden relative. She's a forbidden relative through either she's a forbidden relative, blood relative, or through marriage, and the punishment of them marrying would carry some kind of a death penalty. Then there's no Yibam whatsoever. There's nothing to talk about. No Yibam whatsoever. That was the example. If you have a man married to his niece, his brother's daughter, then he dies without children, and now that woman falls to her father for Yibam. In that situation, there's no Yibam whatsoever. Nothing. There's no Yibam connection. You don't need Yibam, Chalitza, she goes free. The examples of our Mishnah, which are right now just going to go through, fitting into the category of forbidden to this one, forbidden to that one, is not necessarily going to be taught. It's going to be is most of the time, I can see at least in the first Mishnah, is going to be talking about a situation where she's not an erva. The prohibition of being married here is not as an erva. Is not that falling to the brother. She's an erva to the brother. She's forbidden to the brother, but she's not an erva. So therefore, being forbidden is going to make it not possible to perform Yibam, but at least Chalitza will have to be done. Because as she's not an erva, there is still a zika, there's still a Yibam bond to him. Okay, so now let's go through the first case the Mishnah elaborates on. The Elu mutaris l'ba'aleyan v'asiris l'yibmeyan. And these are the examples of women that were permitted to their husbands, but are forbidden to their brother-in-law. Kohen Hedyot, a regular Kohen. Shenatza Salmana, he married a widow. Is that a permissible marriage? 100%. A Kohen may marry a widow. A Kohen may not marry a divorcee, but a Kohen may marry a widow. So you had a 100% kosher wedding. V'yesh lo'ach Kohen Gadol, and his one brother that's left for doing Yibam, what's he? He's a Kohen Gadol, he's a high priest. As a Kohen Gadol, he's not allowed to marry a widow. So therefore, there is your first example of permitted to the husband, but forbidden to the brother. And as pointed out, the Mishnah says the case is the Kohen Hedjit married an almana, married a widow. Let's say he married a virgin. She wasn't a widow. She was never married before. But when he dies, what is she now? A widow. And she can't marry the Kohen Gadol. Doesn't have to be starting as a widow, not to be able to marry the Kohen Gadol brother. Anytime, once he could have married a woman that was never married before. But once they were married, therefore she's now forbidden. Even when the brother dies, she's forbidden to the Kohen Gadol brother. That's the first example. Next example. Chalal shenasa kashera v'yesh le'ach kosher. Literally translated, a chalal that married a kosher woman, and he has a brother who is kosher. What that means like this. That means that a chalal is a child born from a Kohen who married a woman he was allowed to marry. So for instance, the Kohen married a grusha. He married a divorced woman. They had a child. Now typically the child of a Kohen is a Kohen. If the child is born from a forbidden marriage to a Kohen, then the child is called a chalal. He's no more Kohen. Okay? Now, a chalal, there's no prohibition to a chalal can marry. This male child who is a chalal can marry anybody he wants. He's not like a mamzer or anything like that. He can marry anybody he wants. So he married a ksheira. That means he married a woman that was, she has no lineage issues. She's able to marry whoever she wants to. Okay? The thing is, though, that the rule is that although their marriage is permitted, the rule is whoever a chalal marries, that woman gets the status of what we call a chalala, which means that she cannot marry a Kohen. Now, let's say she were now to be divorced. She would not divorced. She would be widowed from her. Well, it doesn't make a difference. If her marriage to her husband would end, and she wants to remarry, she can't marry a Kohen. Not because she did something wrong by being married to the chalal, but that's the rule. A chalal who cohabits with a woman makes her a chalala, so she cannot marry a Kohen. So here you got it. The story is there was a chalal married to a woman. He died without children. And who's his brother? A Kohen. That's kosher. He's not a chalal, a regular Kohen. A regular Kohen can't marry a chalala. So the original marriage was permissible because the husband was a chalal. Okay, he married a woman, fine, but he made her a chalala. And now by giving her the status of a chalala, she can't marry Kohen. So if his only brother now that survived, if the brother that's surviving him is is not a chalal, he's a kosher Kohen, then he can't marry his sister-in-law because she's a chalala. Now, it's important to point out the following in this case, right? We said that this chalal was born from a Kohen who married a grusha, right? And this child was born from that marriage. That made him a chalal, right? So why isn't his brother a chalal if he's got a brother? The answer is because it's a half-brother. The father was married to two women. One woman was fine. The other woman was divorced. So the child from one was a chalal. The child from the other is a Kohen. But they're brothers through the same father. And as long as you are a brother through a father, you have a mitzvah of yibum. So therefore, that's how we can have this case, where you have the marriage was permissible, but now by yibum, the yavim, the brother-in-law, can't perform yibum. Next case. Yisrael shanasa bas Yisrael. Okay? Jewish guy, marries a Jewish woman, everything's good. V'yesh lo ach mamzer. But he's got a brother who is a mamzer. That means his father produced a child through a union that produces a mamzer child, and they're brothers from the same father, and therefore yibum applies. Just that yibum can't be performed because to the wife now, she can't marry the brother. The brother's a mamzer. Or we have a case like this: mamzer shenasa mamzeres. A mamzer married a mamzeres. He's allowed to do that. They're allowed to marry. He dies without children. V'yesh lo ach Yisrael. And ach Yisrael means he has a brother who's in no way his lineage is not damaged in any way. He has a brother Yisrael, a regular brother who has no issues with his lineage, kosher lineage, but he can't marry his sister-in-law. The mamzer and the mamzeres were able to be married. But now when the mamzeres falls to yibum to the brother can't marry her because she's a mamzeres. And as the Mishna concludes, mutaras labaleyan, all these examples that we just listed are women that are permissible to their husbands, but they are forbidden to their brother-in-law, to the one who would now have the mitzvah of yibum to be done, the one who has the yibum connection. And again, in all these cases, the brother cannot do yibum, but since none of these cases none of these women fall into the status of an erva, there is still a yibum bond, there's still a zika. He can't perform the yibum, but he's got to do chalitza to free her. Okay. Now, so the Chofetz Chaim just mentioned that there is no prohibition of speaking lashon hara about an apikaris. Person who falls under the category of apikaris, which the Chofetz Chaim said, he denies any part of the Torah as valid. V'dafka, mishum mehem ba'atzmai derei apikorsis. If you're going to use this license to speak lashon hara about him, you have to know, you have to have heard him speak those words apikorsis. But if others tell you about it, that's the only way you know. The only way you know is because other people said, we heard him say this, we heard him declare this. Then that doesn't give you license. Also, you can't even accept it as the truth. That's accepting lashon hara. Just that what he has to know now is be careful, be cautious on his own. And also tell other people privately, meaning people who he can trust that will accept this in the proper way. He should not have, they should not associate with him until the matter is clarified. However, this is only if it's a rumor. It's something that's getting around, so to speak. It's new news. But let's say they're well established in the city as apikorsim. That means these people publicly, outwardly, have doing what they've been doing to establish them as apikorsim. It's out there in the public. Everybody knows about them. You know, you can think of historical examples of people that could have been considered apikorsim, and it's just they did that because they established themselves that way. They went public. They acted that way generally, and therefore it was established. It was well known that that's who they were. If you can legitimately know that this is what they are, that they're well known that way, then you don't have to go through all of this kind of questioning and stuff like that. That is enough to establish them, and they would have the status of apikorsim, and you could speak lashon hara about them. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.